Good. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to sing this song from Das Avatar.
Water's good.
Thank you so much.
Vitarashi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Vitarashi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Vitarashi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Vitarashi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya.
Should we go more slowly? Vitarasi. Should we go more slowly?
Dikshurane
Vitarasi.
Dikpati Kamaniyam.
Dikshurane.
Vitarasi Dikshurane
Dikpati.
Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati
Vitarasi
Kamaniyam.
Dikshurane. Dikshu is the directions.
Dikpati Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati
Dikshu is the
Kamaniyam.
directions.
Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati
Vitarasi
Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam.
Dasamukha. Dasamukha. Dasamukha.
Moli
Dasamukha.
Moli
Dasamukha.
Balim
Moli.
Moli Balim
Balim.
Ramaniyam
Balim.
Dasamukha Moli
Moli
Balim
Dasamukha
Ramaniyam
Moli. Dasamukha
Balim
Moli.
Ramaniyam
Dashamukha
Moli Balim Ramaniyam
Dashamukha Moli.
Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Dashamukha Molim Balim Ramaniyam. Dashamukha Molim Balim Ramaniyam. Dashamukha Molim Balim Ramaniyam. Dashamukha Moli Balim Ramaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Dasamukha Molim Balim Ramaniyam. Dasamukha Molim Balim Ramaniyam. Dasamukha Molim Balim Ramaniyam. Dasamukha Moli Balim Ramaniyam. Keshavadvita Rama Sharira. Keshavadvita Rama Sharira. Keshavadvita Rama Sharira. Keshavadvita Rama Sharira. Jaganisha Re. Jai Jagadisha Re.
Jaya Jagadisha Re. Jaya Jagadisha Re. Jaya Jagadisha Re. Jai Jagadisha Re. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniya. Dasamukam Olim Balim Ramaniyam. Dasamukam Olim Balim Dasamukam Olim Balim Ramaniyam. Dasamukam Olim Balim Ramaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Dasamukam Olim Balim Ramaniyam. Dasamukam Olim Balim Dasamukam Olim Balim Ramaniyam. Dasamukam Olim Balim Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Dasamukam Olim Balim Ramaniyam. Dasamukam Olim Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam. Dasamukam Olim Balim Ramaniyam. Dasamukam Olim Keshavadita Rama Sharira. Keshavadita Rama Sharira Re. Jai Jagadisha Re. Jai Jagadisha Re. Jai Jagadisha Re. So Valmiki once saw a hunter kill a bird while the bird was mating, which is illegal. Valmiki once saw a hunter. So he was very angry at the hunter, and he cursed the hunter. And he cursed the hunter in a meter never before heard. So he was very angry at the hunter, and he cursed the hunter. Why was I so angry at this hunter? And he cursed the hunter in a meter. Lord Brahma came and said, "This has been arranged so that you would create a new meter, and in this meter you should compose the story. This has been arranged so that you would create a new meter." So of course the Ramayana is a very, very long story, and we're going to be going through it in less than an hour. So, of course, the Ramayana is a
racing
very,
through it.
very long story,
We'll try to at
and we're
least
going to
get
be
the
going through
highlights
it.
in less than an hour.
So, Dasarath
So we're going to be
had three
racing through
queens,
it.
but no son.
We'll try to at
And
least
as we
get
talk
the
about quite a
highlights
lot in the
So
Bhagavatam,
Dasarath
it's very important.
had three
to have
queens,
a
but no
successor.
son.
And as we talk
Yeah,
about,
you
you
not
not
only
only do a good job at your own service, but you make
sure
sure, if you're sick, if you have to travel, you not only do a good job at your own service, but you make sure
someone to take it over.
if you're sick, if
But
you
he
have
had
to
no
travel.
son. When you
So he
die,
brought
when you
Rishishringa,
renounce
which
the
is a
world,
whole long
there's
story
someone to
in and
take
of
it
itself.
over. But
to
he
the
had no
capital
son.
of Ayodhya.
So he
to
brought
do this
Rishishringa,
yajna,
which is a whole long story.
And
in and of
in
itself.
the yajna, he produced the
capital of
payasa, which
Ayodhya,
was given to the
do
three
this
queens,
yajna,
which then, and in the
bore
yajna, he produced the
four
payasa,
sons,
which was given to the three queens,
Ram, Lakshman,
then
Bharat, and
bore four sons.
Ram,
And of
Lakshman,
course,
Bharat,
Dasarath
was very attached to his sons, having had them
And
in
of course,
his older
in
age.
Dasarath,
We find a little parallel.
Nanda and Yasoda
Very
also
attached
waited
to
quite a
his
while
sons,
before they were able to have
having
children.
had them in his older
We
age.
have,
We
of
find a
course,
little
Jagannath
parallel.
Mishra and
Nanda and
Sachi,
Yasoda also
where
waited
their
quite a
daughters
while
all
before
died
they were
after
able to
birth.
have
So
children.
we have these
We have, of
instances,
course,
Devaki
Jagannath
and
Mishra and Sachi,
Vasudeva,
where
whose
their
children were
daughters all
killed.
died
We have all
after
these
birth.
instances
We
where
have these
Krishna arranges that when he
Devaki and
appears, his
Vasudeva,
parents
whose
become
children
very
were killed. We have
attached
all
to
these
him.
instances
where
So of
Krishna
course,
arranges
Dasarath
that
was
when
very
he appears, his
attached to all
parents
four of
become
his
very
sons,
attached to him.
sons are described as
So, of
all
course,
Vishnu,
Dasarath was very
or
attached
sometimes
to
as
all
Vishnu
four of
and
his
his
sons.
weapons. And are described as all
Rama's
Vishnu,
own birth
or
mother
sometimes as
Kausalya was
Vishnu
most
and his
attached
weapons.
to him. The other queens similarly,
Rama's
Kaikeyi
own
and birth
Sumitra,
mother
they also
Kausalya
saw
was
Ram
most
like their own
attached
child.
to him. The other queens
So, of
similarly,
course,
in those
Kaikeyi
days,
and Sumitra,
people were
they
very
also saw
careful
Ram
to
like
train
their
their
own child.
children,
So,
not
of
just
course,
in regular
in
education,
those days,
but
people
according
were
to
very
their
careful
particular
to train
career
their
children,
children, their varna.
not
And
just
so
in regular
the four
education,
princes
but
were
according
trained
to their
at a young
particular
age
career,
to be
according to their
warriors.
varna.
And
So
by
the
Vasista
four
Muni.
princes were trained
One day,
at a young age to be warriors.
Vishramrita
By Vasista
came to
Muni.
see Dasarath
One day and said, demons are attacking
Vishramrita
my sacrifice.
came
And
to see
Dasarath said,
Dasarath.
I will come and kill the
and
demons.
said, demons
And
are attacking
Vishramrita
my
said,
sacrifice.
No, I don't
and
want
Dasarath
you.
said,
I will come
Ram
and kill the
Lakshman.
demons. And Dasarath, having
said,
greeted
"No, I don't
Vishramrita and
want
saying,
you.
you
I
can have
want
whatever you
Ram
want,
and Lakshman."
he kind of stuck. And Dasarath, having greeted Vishramrita and saying, you can
He
have
sent
whatever
Ram
you want, he
and Lakshman
kind of stuck.
with Vishramrita.
So Vishramrita
He
first
sent Ram
them.
and Lakshman
This microphone
with
is really
Vishramrita.
not. Can we get the other? So Vishramrita first them. Vishramrita first took them to the ashram that had. Vishramrita first took them, formerly belonged to the ashram that
Gautam Muni.
and there Vishramrita instructed the Lord to put his feet on a
Gautam
stone.
Muni.
At which point
And there
the stone
Vishramrita
turned
instructed
into
the
Ahalya
Lord
to put his feet
So
on a
Ahalya
stone.
was the wife
At which
of
point the
Gautam
stone
Muni,
turned into
but
Ahalya.
Indra
had taken the form of
So
her husband
Ahalya
at
was
one
the
time
wife
and polluted
of
her.
Gautam Muni.
At
But
which point
Indra
her
had
husband
taken
cursed
the
her to
form of
become
her
a
husband
stone.
at one time.
But after she was touched by the lotus
At which
feet
point
of
her
Lord
husband cursed her to
Ramachandra,
become a
as
stone.
she regained her demigoddess
But after
form,
she
and
was
she was touched by the
reunited
lotus
with her
feet of
husband.
Lord Ramachandra.
Now
the main thing
she
that
regained
Vishramrita
her
had wanted
demigoddess form, and
was
she
for Ram
reunited
and
with her
Lakshman to
husband.
kill Taraka,
Now the main
Subahu,
thing that
and Marich,
Vishramrita had
who were
wanted
polluting
was
their
for Ram and
yajnas.
Lakshman
And
to
although
kill
the Brahmanas
Taraka,
could kill
Subahu,
demons, they
and
wouldn't do
Marich.
it. They would only have
who were
the Kshatriyas
polluting
do
their
it.
yajnas.
And Ram was
And although the
hesitant
Brahmanas
to
could
kill a
demons,
woman.
they wouldn't
It's
do it. They would
interesting
only
that
have
both
the
Ram
Kshatriyas
and
do it.
Krishna, and
The
Ram
first
was
demon they
hesitant
kill is a woman,
to
and they
kill
said,
a
"We don't
woman.
want to
It's
kill a
interesting
woman."
that both
But
Ram and
Vishramrita
Krishna
said, "You do
the
it
first
on
demon
my
they kill is a woman.
order."
And
I said, "We don't want to kill a
And so
woman."
this great
But Vishramrita
female
said, "You do
demon
it on
was
my
killed by
order."
Ram, who then protected the
this
yajna
great
because
female
Marich and
demon was
Subahu
killed
and Taraka,
by
they had
Ram,
been throwing
who then
blood and
protected
urine
the
and
yajna
stool and
because
bones.
Marich and
Imagine if we were
Subahu
doing a
and
yajna
Taraka,
here. They had been
and all of
throwing
a sudden
blood and urine and
bones
stones and urine
bones.
and stool
Imagine
is
if we were
falling
doing
into
a
the
yajna
fire.
here.
So that's
And all
what
of
the
a sudden
demons were
blood
doing.
and bones
And
and
so
urine
Ram and
and
Lakshman,
stool is
they
falling
killed
into the fire.
Subahu and Taraka. But Marich, they Ram and Lakshman, they killed.
Ram
took an arrow
Subahu
and
and
sent him at a
Taraka,
great distance.
but
Marich, they didn't kill. So after they finished killing these demons, then Vishwamitra told them the story of the descent of the Ganga. So after they finished killing these demons, and he also told them how in Mithila, King Janaka was plowing the field, and he also told them how in Mithila, sacrifice, King Janaka, and in doing that, was plowing the field in preparation for a great sacrifice, child. And in doing that, he adopted as his daughter a box. Sita. And when Sita was very young, she had taken the bow of Lord Shiva, which could only be moved by 1,500 men. And when Sita was very young, and she had taken the bow of Lord Shiva, which could only be moved by 1,500 men. At which point Janaka said, whoever can lift and string this bow will marry Sita. So Vishwamitra took Ram and Lakshman to lift and string this bow will marry Sita. So Vishwamitra took Ram and Lakshman was able, even though no one else was, Ram was able not only to string the bow of Shiva, but able, even though no one else was, Ram was able not only to string the bow of Shiva, but to break the bow. So then there is a grand wedding, and the other two sons of Dasarath, Bharat and Shatrughna, were called. There is a grand wedding, and the other two sons of Dasarath, Bharat and Shatrughna, were called. And Shatrughna married Sita, and Urmila's cousin sisters, Mandavi and Shrutakirti. And so there was a grand wedding that all the demigods attended. Mandavi and you would say, well, then they're going to live happily ever after. All the demigods. But as they're returning to Ayodhya, you would say, well, then who comes but Parasaram? And the Kshatriyas are not very to Ayodhya. They don't like Parasaram very much because he killed 21 generations of Kshatriyas. Are not very. Parasaram represents the destruction of corruption in leadership. Whenever you hear of anyone, Parasaram represents the destruction of corruption. So he challenged Lord Ramachandra. He said, you could lift Shiva's bow, but what about Vishnu's bow? So he challenged Lord Ramachandra. He said, you could lift Shiva's bow, but what about Vishnu's bow? Who gave up his reign on the earth to Lord Ramachandra and went to perform austerities. So then they returned to Ayodhya, and Sita Ram were very happy in Ayodhya for a very long time. Then Dasarath is thinking, well, I had these boys because I wanted to have succession. I wanted the kingdom to go on. And I had them when I was already older. So it's time now for me to renounce. It's time for me to become a vanaprastha and turn over the kingdom to my sons. And so he decided that tomorrow is an auspicious day and we're going to coronate Ramachandra as the next king. Now at this time, Bharat and Shatrughna were out of town. They were visiting Kaikeyi's relatives. And when Kaikeyi's maidservant Manthara heard that Lord Ramachandra was going to be coronated the next day, she decided that it must be some kind of a conspiracy. You know, there are always people like this, right? Whatever happens, they think, it's a conspiracy. So she decided that Dasarath had intentionally decided to coronate Ram when Bharat and Shatrughna were out of town, and that he had assured Kaikeyi that Bharat would be the next king. So she comes and tells Kaikeyi, and Kaikeyi's happy. Oh, I love Ram. I'm happy he's going to be the king. And she says, you don't understand. When he is the king, Bharat will be a servant, and you will become Kausalya's servant. You'll be nothing. And somehow or other, Kaikeyi becomes bewildered. And she goes to Dasarath, and she says, remember when I was helping you on the battlefield, and you promised me 2 benedictions, and now I want them. Yes, yes, my dear queen, whatever you want, you can have. No problem. You want half my kingdom, you can have that. She says, I want my son Bharat to be the king, and I want Ram exiled for 14 years. So in former times, if you couldn't give someone capital punishment, you would exile them. And she figured if Ram was exiled for 14 years, all the citizens would forget about him. So when Ram found out about this, Dasarath actually wanted him to fight against this, and Lakshman wanted to fight against this, but Ram said no. If my father has given this benediction and it is my mother's order, then I should follow. Ram epitomizes this concept of dharma. And so he puts on tree bark, and Lakshman had said to him, if you're going, I'm going to follow you. And Sita said, I will also follow you. And Ram's like, no, follow me. She said, what kind of a wife am I if I'm only with you when you're in the palace, and when you're exiled for no good reason, you're innocent, but you're exiled. Why shouldn't I also follow you? So all three of them put on tree bark, and here Dasarath is lamenting and Kaikeyi is gloating. And of course Ram goes to take blessings from his mother before departing. Now when Ram, Lakshman, and Sita go to the forest, all of Ayodhya wants to follow them. They say, what is the use of our kingdom without Ram? But when they go to sleep by the bank of the river, Ram tells the chariot driver, he says, you just take us across the river so no one will see the wheel tracks in the water. And when they woke up in the morning, Ram, Lakshman, and Sita were gone. So as they continue, they meet Guha. Guha is the head of a forest tribe. And Ram particularly has devotees among like animals and lower classes of people. He's a very merciful incarnation. And so Guha says to him, you can stay in my village for your whole 14 years. And Ram says, no, that's not exile. Exile means I have to just stay in the forest. Yes, so he didn't even go into Guha's village for the night. And so Lakshman and Sita stayed with him. At this point, Ram and Lakshman put some tree sap in their hair and matted their hair. And they said to Guha, please help us to cross the Ganga and go someplace where we're not going to be found by the people. So Guha arranges for this boatman who says that what he wants as payment is to wash the lotus feet of the Lord. So he takes this water on his head, and Sita offers beautiful prayers to Mother Ganga. So then they go into the forest. Where's the first place they went to? Chitrakoot. So as on their way to Chitrakoot, they run into many sages in the forest, and the sages tell them that there are demons living in the forest who are eating the sages. And so Ram says, I will take a vow that I will protect you against the Rakshasas. Then Sita says to Ram, afterwards when they leave the sages, she says, was this proper? We're living in the forest. You're not the king. The king is meant to protect, but you're not living as a king. And Ram said, well, we're not vanaprasthas. We haven't. This is a temporary exile. I'm still a Kshatriya Grahasta. And anyway, I already took the vow. Already done. So that's what I'm going to do. And this, of course, will be very significant as the story goes on. Meanwhile, back in Ayodhya, when Dasarath understands that Ram, Lakshman, and Sita are not coming back, that they crossed the Ganga and they've gone into the forest. So he becomes completely devastated, and his health fails. He becomes blind, and he tells his queens and his servants about how when he was young, he accidentally at night, shooting by sound, killed a young Brahmin boy who was getting water from the river, thinking the boy was an elephant, and that the boy's aged and blind parents cursed him that he would die in separation from his son, and they themselves then died in separation from their son. Of course, to die in separation from Ram is the greatest thing. And interesting also that Dasarath was very attached to Kaikeyi, but when he left his body, he had no more attachment to Kaikeyi, and he was just filled with love for Ramachandra. So Bharat and Shatrughna come back, and they find out that their father has died. The mothers are widows, And Ram, Lakshman, and Sita are in the forest. And Kaikeyi says to Bharata, now you have to take the throne. And he says, no, I'm not taking the throne. And he renounces his mother. Prabhupada talks about this, how one can renounce one's authorities if they are fallen. Right? Prahlad renounces his father. He's happy when Nrsingadev kills his father. Bharat renounces his mother. Bali Maharaj renounces his guru. So Bharat says, you're not my mother anymore. And then Bharat leads the citizens to find Ramchandra in the forest. Guha, he meets up with Guha because that was Ram's last known address. And Guha tells how they crossed the Ganga and they were able to trace their steps and find them at Chitrakoot. And Bharat says, sorry, I'm not being the king, we'll switch, I'll do the exile and you should be the king. And Ram says, no, it's not how it works. But Bharat refuses, and it's interesting that Bharat's love supersedes Ram's attachment to the strict letter of the law. And so Ram says, all right, officially I will be the king, but you will rule as my representative. And Bharat asks Ram for his shoes and takes his shoes back to Ayodhya. He installs Ram's shoes on the throne. And Bharat actually lives more austerely than Ram and Lakshman are living in the forest. He's just drinking cow urine, barley cooked in cow urine, and he lives outside of the palace. And he runs the kingdom like that. So then Ram, Lakshman, and Sita decide they're not going to stay in Chitrakoot because everyone knows where they are now, and so everybody will be coming to see them. So they start going through the forest, and now they start killing these demons they promised to kill, and one of the first ones they kill is Virad. And so Virad attacks, and Ram and Lakshman kill him. At this point, they come to a place called Panchavati. I'm skipping a whole lot of little things like meeting of Agastya. Anyway, they come to Panchavati, and Panchavati is very near an outpost of Ravana's brothers and sister. So Kar, Dushan, and Trishirash and Shurpanakha are very near to Panchavati. And Shurpanakha sees Ram and she falls in love with him. So she comes to see him. Of course, she actually disguises herself as a beautiful woman, kind of like what Putana does. And she says, my dear Lord Ramachandra, I want to marry you. And Ram says, sorry, I have this Ekpatni Vrat, one wife, whole life. That doesn't mean even until death. It means whole life. Even after Sita disappears, Ram does not marry again. He says, but my brother Lakshman has not taken any such vow, and his wife Urmila, she is back in Ayodhya, so he could take you as his second wife. And Lakshman's like, no, look, you're a princess, and I'm here acting as a servant, and you'd have to be a servant, and I don't think you would like that very much. And Shurpanakha then decides that the whole problem is Sita, that if she just killed Sita, that Ram would fall in love with her. So she goes to attack Sita, at which point Lakshman cuts off her nose and ears. So she goes to her brothers, Kar and Dushan and Trishirash, and she says, I have been insulted. Avenge my honor. And so Kar and Dushan come with 14,000 Rakshasas to attack Ram and Lakshman. And Ram tells Lakshman, go protect Sita in a cave. And Ram alone kills all 14,000 Rakshasas, including Kar and Dushan and Trishirash. The only one to survive is Akampan. So Akampan goes to Ravana and tells him about this battle and says, we have a human prince in the forest who's decimating your armies. But Shurpanakha also comes. When Akampan comes, Ravana's like, okay, I don't want anything to do with these people. I'm going to keep my distance. And then Shurpanakha comes. She comes with her nose and ears cut off. And she says, look what was done to me. And she lies and she cheats. And she says, I was trying to capture Sita for you, my dear brother. Is that true? Not at all. And she says, I was trying to serve you. This is called emotional manipulation. and you should avenge my honor. You're supposed to be a brother, a hero, a king. And anyway, Sita is amazing. And if you really want to avenge me, don't fight with Ram directly. Kidnap his wife. He would die without his wife. And she's the most qualified woman, more qualified than all the other wives and concubines you have in your harem. She is fit to be your queen. And she starts describing Sita. And Ram does this, contemplating the object of the senses. One develops attachment from attachment, lust. And he thinks, how am I going to get Sita? So he goes to see his old friend Marich, who you remember that Ram had sent to a distant place. Marich was a magician, but he was performing austerities. And he said, Marich, I want you to help me capture Sita because I can only do it by deception. He says, I want you to take the form of a golden deer and distract Ram and Lakshman, at which point I will kidnap Sita. Marich is like, no. Ram is not a human. He's the Lord. Don't mess with him. If you try to capture Sita, you'll destroy your kingdom. And Ravana says, I want her. And you have a choice. You can be killed by Ram, or you can be killed by me. So much better to be killed by God than to be killed by Ravana, but even materially, better to die at the hands of an enemy than to be punished by your own king. So Marich takes the form of a golden deer and approaches the hermitage of Ram. And Sita sees this deer and she says, look at this beautiful deer. My dear Lord, can you capture him? I would love to have him as a pet. And if you're not able to capture him alive, if you kill him, you can take this marvelous hide and we can bring it back with us to Ayodhya. And Ram says, I don't think this is a regular deer. I think it's a demon. Actually, Lakshman says, I think this is a demon. And Ram says, that's all right. If it's a demon, then we will kill the demon. So Ram goes to follow the deer, and the deer leads Ram further and further away. And Lakshman is there protecting Sita. But when Ram shoots the deer takes his form as Marich and cries out in Ram's voice, Lakshman! Sita! Help! And Sita says to Lakshman, your brother is calling. And he says, no, my brother can't be calling. He can't be killed by any demon. Don't worry. She says, you come to the forest waiting for the death of your brother so you could have me as your own. At which point Lakshman was so hurt that he leaves Sita to go to Ram. Then Ravana takes the form of a holy man and approaches Sita and asks for alms. So Indra does a similar thing at Prithu's sacrifice, right? He dresses as sannyasi. I think there's about 2,000 crimes every year in America where criminals dress up as police officers. Right? We've always had some demons who pretend to be holy persons. And Sita, of course, comes to give him alms, at which point he captures her. And he takes her on his chariot drawn by asses to Lanka. But then Ram's friend Jatayu, who was guarding the ashram, comes to protect Sita and fight with Ravana, and he destroys Ravana's chariot. But he's no match for Ravana. And Sita had begged Jatayu, she said, you are too old and he is no match for you. Please do not fight with him. I remember when Srila Prabhupada came to New York in 1976 for our first Rath Yatra there. And the devotees were doing this drama of the Ramayana. I was sitting about 3 rows behind Srila Prabhupada. And I remember when the devotee who played Sita Rasagya, when she says this to Jatayu, she says, no, Jatayu, you are too old, and he is no match for you. And somehow I was sitting, right by Prabhupada, and New York disappeared, and the drama disappeared, and there we were in the Dandaka forest.
is Sita being kidnapped. So, of course, we had Chaitanya Charan Prabhu just gave a whole class about Jatayu and about apparent failure in devotional service, that Jatayu apparently he's defeated and he fails. So when Lakshman comes and finds Ram, and then Ram says, you left Sita alone, how could you leave Sita alone? And they come back to the hermitage and they find Sita gone, but they also find the dying Jatayu. And Jatayu is able to tell them with his last breath, Ravana took Sita to the south. And then Ram and Lakshman are looking everywhere. Where is Sita? Where is Sita? Where is Sita? And at one point Ram says, I will destroy the universe if I cannot find Sita. And Lakshman says, no, don't destroy the universe. Let us go and find Sita. So they know that Ravana went south, so they're traveling to the south, and the first obstacle they meet is Kabanda. And Kabanda grabs Ram with one arm and Lakshman with another arm, and he was just a torso with arms and legs. When I used to act in the Ramayana, we had a huge Kabanda costume for one of our actors, and we would go and do Harinam in costume, and Kabanda would also come out. That's how we would advertise the drama. So Ram and Lakshman took their swords and they cut off the hands of Kabanda. And as soon as they did that, Kabanda assumed the form of a Gandharva. And he said, please burn my body and then I will help you find your wife. So they burned the body of Kridamba, and in his Gandharva form he tells them how he was cursed and how they should travel to see Shabari, and that Shabari would give them their next directions. So Shabari had been a tribal woman who becomes a great devotee. I think her guru's name was Matanga. And her guru had told her that Ram and Lakshman someday, the Supreme Lord as Ram and Lakshman someday will come and visit you. And so every day you should prepare. And so when he left this world, she wanted to give up her body also. Bir Krishna Swami often talks about this from the 4th canto. When the guru leaves, the disciples, they have to either go with the guru or dedicate their life to the guru. And her guru said, no, you don't come with me, you stay here and prepare for the arrival of Ram and Lakshman. So every day she would put flowers along the path and pick berries to prepare for Ram and Lakshman, and she did this every day for many, many, many years. This is what we're doing when we're chanting our japa. We're chanting our japa, we're chanting our Gayatri. We're making this preparation, yes, that Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, that they will come and manifest themselves someday. So every day she's waiting, and one day when she's making this preparation, Ram and Lakshman actually come. And she's so overwhelmed with ecstasy, and she says, I've picked these forest berries for you. So even though she was trained by a guru, she's still having some tribal culture. So, and she didn't have all of the regulations quite right, Just like, especially when I travel to India, I tell the audiences, I said, look, I'm American and I'm from New York, and, I have a little New York culture. Even though Prabhupada's tried to train me, still I may not be very cultured. So like that. So she was thinking, I only want to offer the Lord the sweetest fruit. So she tasted it first. So normally when we give something to the Lord, we're not even supposed to smell it, what to speak of taste it. And Lakshman was a little hesitant, should we take these berries that have bites in them? But Ramachandra accepted. And Shabari, before she left this world, because after seeing Rama and Lakshman, she left the world, she told them the main persons or main beings who will help you are Hanuman and Sugriva. And you should go to Lake Pampa and enlist their help. And she gave them directions. So that's what they did. They went to Lake Pampa, and there Hanuman met them. And Hanuman told them how his friend and king Sugriva had been exiled by his brother, that his brother Bali had taken his kingdom and his wife, which had a little parallel to what's going on with Ram. Ram was also exiled from his kingdom, his wife was kidnapped, And so they formed a bond of friendship, Sugriva and Ram. And Ram says, I will kill your brother Bali, and I will get back your wife and your kingdom. And Sugriva says, I will help you regain your wife and your kingdom also. Now, interestingly enough, the way Ram kills Bali is very interesting. He has Sugriva challenge Bali to a fight, and while they are fighting, he kills Bali from behind a tree. So the gopis criticize Krishna about this. They criticize Krishna that you didn't accept Shurapanaka, although you were Kshatriya, and you're supposed to accept any woman who comes to you, and you killed Bali like a hunter instead of like a Kshatriya. But of course, Ram's explanation was that because Bali had performed such a heinous activity of stealing his brother's wife, that therefore he had to be killed in this way. So then, of course, there was the rainy season, and Sugriva got into enjoying the kingdom, and Lakshman comes and says, hey, what are you doing? You're supposed to fight for Ram. And then Sugriva kind of gets up from his stupor, and he calls the monkeys and asks them to go in all directions. And especially Ram thought that Hanuman was likely to find Sita because his group was going south, which is where Jatayu told him that Ravana had gone. So Ram gave Hanuman his ring. So Ram had given Hanuman his ring. This way you can show that you are actually my emissary. So the group that goes south, they have a lot of adventures, and they end up on the shore where they meet Jatayu's brother, Sampati, who says, I can see Sita in Lanka. And the various monkeys discuss how they're going to jump. And then Jambavan reminds Hanuman, you have the power to jump across the ocean. And so then Hanuman takes his jump across the ocean, and of course he meets many obstacles along the way. And then he comes to Lanka, and he has to fight the demon who guards Lanka. And then he's looking everywhere for Sita, and first he looks in Ravana's palaces, but he doesn't find Sita there. And finally he finds her in the Ashok Grove. So Hanuman makes himself very small up in the tree, and he hears Ravana threatening Sita that if you don't surrender to me within 2 months, I'm going to cut you up and eat you. And then Hanuman from the tree, he starts singing the glories of Lord Ramachandra, and he wins Sita's confidence and shows her Ram's ring and assures her that Ram will come to save her. But then he thinks, you know, I should do a little bit more. I should do a reconnaissance mission. I should find out all about Lanka and all about the weapons. So he starts knocking down the trees in the Ashok Grove, at which point the Rakshasas capture him, and they bring him to Ravana, and Hanuman tells them, my Lord Ramachandra is going to come and kill you if you don't give up Sita. And Ravana says, kill this messenger. And Ravana's saintly brother Babishan says, you can't kill a messenger. And Ravana says, well, I can at least torture him. Set fire to his tail and let him go. So after being dragged through the streets of Lanka and setting Lanka on fire, Hanuman leaps back across the ocean and goes to tell Ram and the monkeys where Sita is found. At which point they come to the shore of the ocean, and Ram asks the ocean to give way, which it does not. And so he looks at the ocean and starts burning up the ocean, at which point Samudra comes and says, yes, I will allow you to build a bridge. At this point, Bibhishan arrives. This was one of my favorite parts of the drama, where Bibhishan says to Ravana, you should surrender Sita, and Ravana says, you are not actually my brother if you're telling me to surrender Sita. Right? Many times people don't want to hear good advice, and they simply become angry. And Ravana threatened Bibhishan, really reminds us of when Duryodhana threatened Vidura. And so Bibhishan, Prabhupada says, basically took sannyas. He gave up his kingdom, his wife, everything, and he went with some associates to surrender to Ram. When he came, everyone there said, you should kill him. He's the brother of the enemy. Right? And then Hanuman said, yes, but Bibhishan spoke in my favor in the court. And Ram says, if someone surrenders to me, he said, even if Ravana surrenders to me, I will give him protection. And having Bibhishan on their side made a huge difference. And then, of course, they started building the bridge to Lanka, having the stones float in the water, and they all crossed over the ocean. This bridge is still, of course, there to Lanka, and began the great battle. One after another, Ravana's sons and brothers were killed. But at one point, a snake weapon was hurled at Ram and Lakshman, and Garuda came and ate the snakes. Ravana became more and more desperate, and he thought about his brother Kumbhakarna. Kumbhakarna slept for 6 months and was only awake for 1 day, and it wasn't time for him to wake up, but Ravana woke him up anyway. And he started stamping on all the monkeys and chewing the monkeys between his teeth, and there was nothing anyone could do. But Ramachandra shot off his arms and threw his body into the ocean. Then Lakshman was attacked and was very sick and was at the point of departing. And the doctor says we need this Sanjeevani herb, which only grows in the Himalayas. So Hanuman said, I will get it. And he got there, and he's looking at the mountain, and he's like, I don't know what this Sanjeevani herb is. Let me just bring the whole mountain. And so he carries the mountain and saves Lakshman. Then Lakshman, with the help of Bibhishan, kills Ravana's son, Indrajit. And finally, with his brothers and sons all dead, we have the final battle between Ravana and Ramachandra. And at this point, because Ravana has a chariot, Indra gives Ram his own celestial chariot. Of course, this was a terrible battle between Ram and Ravana. Finally, Ram defeats Ravana. And Bibhishan is lamenting his brother. You had so much knowledge, so much opulence, but because you lusted after Sita, you were defeated. And Mandodari, Ravana's wife, one of the most chaste women in the universe, she says, your body is now fit to be eaten by vultures, and your soul fit to go to hell. Then Sita is brought to unite with Ram, but Ram says to Lakshman, she has been in someone else's house. Please set a fire. And Lakshman's like, no, we're not going to do that. But he's obligated. Ram is his older brother. And of course, Sita comes out from the fire, and there's a whole story there about the real Sita and the Maya Sita. And then they return to Ayodhya on Ravana's airplane. And as the Bhagavatam says, as the Lord sat on his airplane of flowers with women offering him prayers and reciters chanting about his characteristics, he appeared like the moon with the stars and planets. And it would be nice if the story ends here. I don't actually know if I can tell the rest of the story. That's not a prime problem. Ram, because Sita was criticized, he banished her, and she gave birth to Love and Kush in Valmiki's ashram. Later, Ram considered taking her back, and she said, no way. And she entered into the earth. And Hanuman is always singing the glories of Ramachandra. Okay, I have something special for all of you.